Good morning, everybody. I'm going to go ahead and get started. Feel free if you want to refill your coffee at any time, or just like standing up and walking around. We try to keep these pretty casual. I'm sure some people will still be coming in, rainy day, traffic, etc. And some people have to leave early, and that's fine. It's great to have you come in. We'll do probably about 3 more of these this year, pair coffees. Usually they're either 7th grade or 8th grade. In November we'll have a 7th and 8th grade pair coffee. So it sort of depends as we go through the year. And part of it is, we try to pick a topic which we think will draw some people in, but a lot of it is really to give the opportunity for parents to meet each other. I think one of the difficult things when your son's at school at BCI, where students are coming from such a wide geographic area, it's hard to know the other parents. It's a little different than when your son goes to local elementary school and you know the people across the street whose children are also going there. So it's an opportunity for you to hopefully get to meet each other over the next couple of years. Some of the parent coffees are a little more us talking, me talking, and Tracy, our guidance counselor, speaking. And sometimes, a lot of times, we also try to get some ones where we're all sitting there together as parents and saying, okay, how do we do this, and sharing some tips and stuff like that. So today, the topic is homework and organization. I'll talk a little about some of the things we're trying to do as far as assignments go. Tracy will talk a little bit about some organizational tips and some of the things that she and Jen Hornby, our other guidance counselor, do to support students who are struggling with organization. As far as homework goes right now, over the past month plus we've been in school, they shouldn't have had that much homework. And there's a couple reasons for that. One is we spend a lot of time in the first month, September, October of 7th grade with that transition. And really trying to make them comfortable here at BCI, trying to make them a part of the community, building their confidence, just making sure they feel comfortable where things are. The other thing is, I would say, the trend over the past 12 years in the Arupe division has been probably less homework. And a couple of things with that. One is, I think we've gotten better at eliminating some of the busy work. You don't have to assign 50 math problems when 12 would probably work and they can get it down. But being more thoughtful about assignments so that we're not assigning things that have no purpose. And that has reduced the work. The other thing that's reduced the work has been, over the last few years, the team classes. A lot of what goes on in team classes is students doing the work in the classes. So where the great advantage to that is they can get feedback right away. It's either working with our students or working with the teacher, so if the kid is struggling with what the assignment is, the teacher can see that right away and give feedback. And feedback is the most important thing. Studies show that feedback towards working towards a goal is the #1 thing that leads to learning. So you see more of that happening in the team class, so a lot of times there's less work there. But again, part of it is also September. As we're trying to figure out who these guys are and make sure where we can meet them where they are and figure out what goes with it. It will change a bit in the next, we usually do this a little bit later towards the end of October, but which is a little bit right on time. But sometime you'll see some changes in early November. This assignment's going to be a little more rigorous. One of the things you'll see as we get close to the progress reports, which are early November, just before the parent conferences. As you get close to the end of a grading period, the progress report at the end of the grading period, the teachers are going to have some more assignments coming in. It's also going to be in those classes where they do a lot of retakes. Students who have put off doing a retake are going to be hustling to get their retakes in, and that's going to require more studying, more preparation, so they'll get busy. The other thing that happens in early November, which is sort of ironic, is for a lot of the guys, when the sports teams end, they now have an extra 2 hours, hour and a half in their day. So now they have 2 hours they didn't used to have, so 2 hours to waste, which means they often will waste 4 hours. When they have no time to waste, they don't waste any time at all. When you have 2 hours to waste, why not waste 4? So they're going to need a little more support at that point in time, some of them, as we go into that period of November and really December where there aren't any after-school sports. We'll have more clubs and activities and stuff like that going on, but a lot of times some of the guys really keep it all maintained during the season, drop the ball when the season ends. And the other thing, of course, as we get into November, they get tired. They start in September, very fresh from the summer, and as the school year goes on, and we hit November, they start to get tired. So all those things sort of come into play in a few weeks, so just kind of keep an idea on that. We talk about homework a lot in the Big Division. We talk about practice meetings, we put some articles on it, we discuss, we go back and forth on sort of where we should do homework. But there are three reasons people assign homework. Number one is for practice. So in a math class, in a language class, in English and grammar, they're teaching a particular concept. Math class runs pretty much the same every day. There's some warm-up problems on the board, go over the homework, they introduce a new concept, which is usually a little bit more than whatever they were doing the day before. And then homework is, then they do some sample problems together, and then homework is 10 problems, 15 problems, whatever it is, practice that they're going to do. And that's similar to a language class, maybe like that, and you're showing them how to conjugate the ER verb in Spanish. You do a couple together, they go home and they conjugate more. It's practice. So repetition. And the idea, what we try to convince boys to do with homework and practice is keep practicing until you get them all right. They're going to go over it the next day in class. Math class, they're not probably going to grade the homework. They might check it to see if it's done. Maybe a 0, 1, 2 scoring point. But then they're going to go over it. And I say to the boys, well, if you had 10 problems for homework and you got 5 of them wrong, what are you likely, and you get 5 of them wrong every night, what are you likely to get on the test on Friday? And the idea is, work it through practice. And if you are getting 5 wrong, go first. Make sure, and again, and then they say, some of the boys will say, yeah, it's just a careless mistake. Well, yeah, you make the same careless mistake on the test. Again, practicing until you get it right. So practice is one. Second reason for homework is preparing for class. So that might be reading 2 chapters in the English book, because we're going to have a discussion on the chapters in class. Reading an article for social studies, because we're going to have a discussion of that article. Preparing or reading something. A lot of times that's more the reading assignments. Again, it's preparing for something they're going to do in class, building off that assignment. And then some of the assignments are more straight assessment, where they're going to get a grade on it to see if they have developed the skill that they've been practicing, or the knowledge that they're supposed to have. So, an essay in English is going to be an assessment. And they're going to be assessing if they get the writing skills that we were teaching, and did they get the content of the literature we've been talking about. Whether, a journal assignment in religion class, things like a climate report in social studies. Those are going to be for assessment, and they tend to be a bigger, significant part of the grade. So 3 reasons to give homework. For most boys, they have to do the homework in order to learn, part of the learning. Now some of them, at this age, at this level of classes, can probably still, again, a few guys, if they just listen in class, they'll understand everything they need to understand. And they may not need the practice, but for the most part, they need the practice. But we're also trying to teach them habits at this point in time. Habit of completing work and turning it in on time. It's a good habit to have. It's a good habit to have throughout their lives. Some of them, just because of who they are and how they're built and how they're wired, have that habit, and they will never lose it. And other guys, because of the way they're wired, it's the last habit they're going to come by. And we work with that. That's who they are. So work with it. We do a couple of things to try to help build that habit. One is sort of the stick, and that is they don't have their homework done when they come to class. They get homework slip, fill it out, goes to the office, and they have to go to silent study hall after school that day. And they can't do anything else. So they can't go to their practice, and they can't go to their club, and they can only go to silent study hall after school that day. It's just that day. and the next day we're fine. And it builds up, and we're a little judicious with that. It's meant to help them develop their habits. If you have nothing after school that day, it's not that big of a deal. If you have your last soccer game of the season, it's a more crucial thing. We do try to balance that out. That, okay, when are we going over the edge of what we're trying to do? So, tryouts. I'm always reminding teachers during tryout period, really try to remind them to get their assignments in, but give them some extra chance. So, we play with that a little bit. So that's the stick. The carrot is just really trying to make the assignments something that the kids feel like is worth their time. And, so that making sure it's a purpose. They're not doing an assignment where they're just saying, like, I have no idea what this has to do with anything we're doing in class or anything we're learning. This doesn't make sense. Try to make sure we don't have any of those assignments. But also some assignments that are connected to their lives. We know what they're doing. We make a connection between what they're doing and who they are. They're going to be more invested. And again, some kids are just connected to everything. But others, that makes a purpose. Or the whole idea that the city project that we're working on this year is connecting to their lives. The idea of you take these, you look around the world and we look at the challenges people face around the world, and they learn about those. And for most guys, that's great, but it's not really my life. But if they're building, they're creating in their paper, in their minds, their Minecraft, whatever, their own cities, and those cities that are their cities face those challenges, then it's connected to their lives. So that's one of the things we try to do is, again, as best we can, connect these assignments to us. We do it well some days, we don't do it as well other days, but that's something we try to do. Third thing is making challenging assignments. That trying to get that sweet spot where it's just a little bit hard to do. If something's too easy, a lot of times like, why am I bothering to do this? I could do this in my sleep. But if it's too hard, it makes no sense and they get frustrated and not much learning goes on. But real learning hits right in that sweet spot of just a little bit of a reach. If we can find that as often as we can, that helps. That gets them more excited. Feel good when you do something you think is hard, but you can actually manage it. It's a feeling of accomplishment. So those are some of the things we try to do to get the boys engaged in the homework. Guys don't do homework for two reasons. One is motivation. They just don't want to do it for whatever reason, and maybe because they want to do something else that's more exciting to them. Sometimes that's a really cool thing that they're doing that's more exciting to them. Part of it's motivation. Again, we try to make our assignments interesting. We try to create a classroom atmosphere in which guys feel like that's just what we do, and they're excited to do it, and participate, and be part of what everybody's doing. The other piece is that they don't do their homework is organization. And for some guys, it's called motivation and organization. Talk about organization, that's more Tracy's expertise. So Tracy Domas is our guidance, 7th grade guidance counselor, should be with your sons this year and next year.
So I'm going to start by sharing a couple things that I think it's good for all of our boys to be doing. So if you're not seeing it, it's good to check in about, and then a couple things that we're noticing issues already or things to have on your radar. So for organizing their work, and sort of tracking their work, and going off of what Bob was talking about, our boys, they kind of have a split schedule, right? Math, language, drama, health, art, there's a lot more routine homework. You might have a journal. Boys just finished drama today. They might be relieved to be done with those drama journals that they have to do every other day. If they're moving into it, there's going to be some more consistent work there. And then they have team classes where a lot of the work's done in team, but there's still something they need to track. So how do they track their work? How do they organize it? One thing I would hope all of you know, but you might not because your sons might not have told you, is that every one of them got a paper planner on the first day of school. In homeroom, it has the BC High logo on the front, it's maroon. They have a paper planner if they want to use it. We don't require that they use that paper planner. So they might have been in a school before where they were required to use it. That's not the case anymore. So they have a couple options, right? The paper planner, they have their iPad. So on their iPad, a lot of our boys will use an app called My Homework app, right? And that's a separate planner app where they can write in, they put in assignments, they can put in notifications for it to kind of give them a little bubble when something's due. They can add extra notes. They can use that. They can use Google Calendar. So a lot of boys, I will tell them, if they're pretty good at tracking stuff, I'll say, put something in Google Calendar though, because we can set it, and I have been on a million iPads, to do a little notification. So at 6:15, when you're about to leave your house, the thing you always forget is your Spanish folder. It goes, bring your Spanish folder right at the top of their iPad, because they're going to turn it on to maybe see what's happening on their Fortnite game or whatever they want to do on it, check the scores from whatever game was the night before, and they'll get that notification. What a lot of our boys choose to do is not any of those, but to use Canvas as their planner. And they say, well, my teacher posts everything on Canvas. I don't need to track anything. And that is sort of a false belief that they have, right? So their teachers do post all of their homework on Canvas. But they might have something like a presentation for Mr. DeVito or Miss Bennis that they've been working on in class, that they have to present in 4 days. And they're working on it in class with their teammates, making the slides, doing all of that. But one thing that they aren't doing is practicing it out loud over and over again, right? That presentation piece that I did make sure you can present it, not just reading off the script, but your teachers want you to be able to present and say it. So putting something in a planner that says, practice my presentation for those 3 days. That's not going to be on Canvas in the same way, right? That's something we want them to do. Something like a retake. So if they end up needing to do a retake for something, that's not going to pop up for them when they decide that. So they get, maybe, I'm still working on my standards here, meeting the standard. Is that the middle one, Ms. Tramlett? Meeting, progressing. Progressing is the middle? Progressing.
Yes.
They get progressing on the standard. They might want to redo that to get to meeting the standard, right? That's not going to show up on their Canvas. That's up to them to add that in. So they might need to meet with Mr. Travers about my math. Every boy, I think, is doing like math quizzes right now. So about my math quiz, my Outsiders math quiz that I need to retake. So first you have to schedule in that meeting, you need to track it. Then you need to schedule in studying for that retake, because just doing the retake when you haven't practiced again, which you got wrong, is not going to get you anywhere. So you have to study for it. Then you have to take the retake. So you have 3 things you need to add into a planner or an app or something that you're tracking that's not going to pop up on your Canvas for you. There could be things like doing independent reading, right? For their English teachers, they're probably reading. If they're not, if they need to work on reading, maybe there's a book of interest, something that they can always schedule in. So I would strongly encourage, one of the first things as we ease into the school year, to make sure your son has a way he tracks his homework. And instead of saying, like, don't use Canvas, because maybe he's got a reason, come in when you see him, if you don't know yet, just say, hey, how are you keeping track of all the stuff going on in your classes? Can you show me? A lot of what's happening right now is boys are using apps and things on their iPad, and they've got some system where they write like a code on their planner and it's supposed to mean something. It might work for them. So I don't try to impose on them what I think is the best. I just try to ask them to explain it. And if I know, like, okay, well, what about Spanish? You know Spanish homework today, but how would you mark your Spanish homework for tomorrow? If they're sort of struggling to explain that, that's when we want to find a system that works for them. But keep an eye on how are they tracking it? What are they using? Finding a time to check in with those teachers and write down their homework. So writing down your son, if you're noticing already a homework slip or two, or an email from a teacher that says like, you know, everybody's supposed to have the English assignment in by yesterday, he was still working on it, check in and say, hey, when do you make sure you've done your work? Is it at the beginning of class or at the end of class that you make sure you've written down what's due tomorrow? Is it at the end of the day that you go see a teacher you need for extra help, or is it during flex? Or is it during break, right? So checking with them, get them to kind of give you the answers of how they're using their time, how they're staying organized. So part of organizing isn't just tracking their homework, it's tracking their time. So getting into time management, and Bob was talking about this a bit, but the opportunities that we have to help them sort of navigate that, right? So they've got a sense of what they need to work on, and maybe for someone, what they're struggling with is this social studies retake. So they need to find some time to meet with those teachers. So I was working with a student on this just the other day, and I want to put it in his hands, right? Like, when do you want to meet Mr. Travers? Well, he might not want to ever do that, but when could you meet Mr. Travers about this test that you need to retake? He starts thinking, like, what about flex? He doesn't want to give up flex, right? He's like, well, I don't know about flex. So what about, he's like, what about break on Thursday? Okay, Break is a great thing. If your son hasn't mentioned break yet, and you think it's something that he needs, you want him to be meeting with teachers, doing things, ask him about break. Break is 20 minutes every day. You can get a lot done in 20 minutes. And that's what I'm trying to help them figure out in the beginning of 7th grade, right? In 20 minutes, you could have that meeting with Mr. Travers, you could get the sheet you need to restudy, you could schedule in the retake, and you could probably go talk to your friends for 7 minutes. You can get a lot done in 20 minutes that helps you check that off and not avoid it. So we're trying to get them to use time like that. So to encourage them to find what works for them. If he doesn't need 40 minutes to meet with Mr. Travers on that day, you can use Flex for something else, but let's make sure we get it done, right? And if you don't go, I'm gonna stop you in the hallway after that of the school day and make you go talk to Mr. Travers anyway, and that's less fun. So let's use our time, let's learn those skills. Things like after-school opportunities. I was in the hallway just the other day. I actually told this student's Spanish teacher, because I thought it was so cute. He was at his locker, 7th grader, and his friend. He says, "What are you doing after school?" And he said, "I'm going to silent study hall." His friend's like, "Oh, you got a homework slip?" He's like, "No." He's like, "Why are you going?" He said, "It's so quiet in there." He loved it. He was so excited to like work in this peaceful setting. So what works for your son? For some of them, it's being in a room where there's a lot of activity going on. He can get some work done for 5 minutes. He can talk to his friends for 5 minutes. He can figure it out. For some of them, it might be silent study hall. It's not punishment for everybody, right? It's a setting that works for them. Maybe having that conversation with them if they're struggling to get their homework done. If you're noticing a lot of homework at home, which is not as regular for us, right? A lot of our boys are getting their work done at school or most of it done. Say, why isn't that working? If you're spending 40 minutes in the homework club after school and getting nothing done, let's try silent study hall. Maybe that's a setting that actually works better for you. Taking advantage of time on the train to do homework, to work with other students. A lot of them, I think, are nervous as they get into BC High to work with other guys. They might not know them yet in their classes. So maybe you're in Latin and you don't know anybody in your Latin class. But it can be really helpful when they do the Our Father in Latin to practice out loud with other guys in your class and not just on your own, right? So encouraging them to find those times. There's a lot of downtime where the boys can be together, break and flex in the train, the morning. One thing I would stress is making sure they have a routine. So a routine for doing their homework, staying organized. It doesn't have to be every morning, every night that you check their folders, check their backpacks. A lot of our guys can get by on once a week, right? Just, do you have everything that you need? You're noticing papers flying out. Does it need to be a couple of times through the week? Do you want their advisor to help? If you're noticing a lot of disheveledness, maybe reach out to the advisor and say, hey, on Mondays and Wednesdays, could you check and just make sure if his backpack's a mess, that he takes a minute, comes into homeroom after school, and organizes himself. Helping your sons get in that routine is really good. One thing that I'm sure you're all noticing, the boys have a really long day, and for almost all of them, it's a longer day than they've ever had before, right? They're getting up a lot earlier, they're taking a train, maybe a bus to a train. I talked to a student yesterday who is dropped off to a path and walks from the path to a bus and the bus to the train and the train to school. That is so much commuting for a 12-year-old, right? They're having a long day, so they're getting used to it. So making sure that when they get home from that day, they have a break. We don't ask them to sit in class for longer than 40 minutes at a time. So I don't ask them to sit down and do homework for more than 40 minutes at a time without a break, right? We know that boys need that time to move around, to stretch themselves. So just helping them develop a schedule. All of this, I would say, is stuff that they should all be figuring out right now. So just keep an eye on it, see how it's working for them. The one thing I would say is, as we get going, if you're noticing a problem, that's when we need to address it. I don't think there's many red flags yet, but as they come up, we've got to tweak the system that's working for them. And that's really when you can come to me, come to their advisor for help, right? What's working, starting to see grades slipping or feedback from teachers that the work is incomplete, it's not done to the expectations, you need to do a lot of retakes, send them to me. We have so many resources here. Junior mentors, NHS students that come to me and honestly ask, can I tutor an Aruba student? I'd really like to work with one, right? They want to help your sons. We want to help them, their teachers want to help them. So if they're starting to struggle with that, let us know. But I'd say right now, sort of use some of these things, make sure they have a system, make sure you're keeping an eye on it, and helping them get those skills in. So I think now, pass it back to you.
Any questions for Tracy? Any thoughts? Yes.
Next week, we have a family, but I'm busy week, Thursday night, I know they don't have school Friday, but if you foresee a busy week, do these kids have a syllabus like we had in high school where they can look ahead to next Wednesday's assignment and sort of on the weekend, they might, they get ahead on their reading or get ahead on whatever it is they need to get ahead on?
Yep, so it's yes and no, but they do. On Canvas, if I was to here, they have a calendar, and you can see it if you are in their Canvas. If you click the calendar, most teachers, especially for big assignments, you can see the assignments coming up for the month, right? So there's little, well, and for some of them, that might be the next week is posted or not, and it's sort of like there's bubbles. It might say, you know, chapter 5 to 7 of The Outsiders is due by next Thursday. You can see that on it's the calendar tab of Canvas. If you're going to be gone or he's going to have a busy week for a lot of boys, and I'm sure you've already heard it, what we stress a lot is them learning that independence skill, but at the beginning of 7th grade, it's like, hey, let's sit down and craft an email that goes out to your teachers. It's from you, not your parents, and it just says, I'm going to be out of town, or I've got a lot going on next week. Can I meet with you on Friday about what's going on next week? Or I'm going to be gone Thursday and Friday. Can I meet with you and go over it? But a lot of them have that posted on Canvas, and their teachers would know if they need to check in one-on-one if it's not posted.
If they know they're going to miss a quiz, do they?
Yep, so they make a plan to reschedule it. Teachers are generally really open. The boys will usually do it the next class day that they're in. They'll just sit out in the hallway and take it. If it's a longer test, like if it's a full period test, they almost always actually come to me and take it in my office. So that they're just not also listening to what's happening in class or activities going on around them. I would say all of our teachers are really flexible with boys missing. If they need to miss for something, we just want them to follow up on it. So if they miss, when they show up to class, the expectation is that they go up to the teacher and say, hey, Mr. DeVito, I was out yesterday. What did I miss? What do I need to make up? Less that the teachers, our expectation of the boys will do that. Not that the teachers say, hey, all 5 of you that missed the last 3 days, here's what you missed.
The boy who comes in and says, hey, I missed yesterday's class, I missed a quiz, but I'm ready for it now, or, even sends an email, I'm ready to take it, I can come in early, or I can do it during flex or during class, what works for you? That goes over pretty well. The guy who comes in and says, yeah, I missed yesterday, but does that mean I have to do something? That doesn't go over as well. So, just being proactive, and it's good, and it's just a good time to be teaching them how to do that, how to send a good email, how to understand that you're asking them to do something extra.
When students miss school, I just want to stress too that boys, if they miss a couple days, nobody's expecting them to necessarily take the test or quiz that they miss right away. Like a lot of our guys in Spanish, if your son's in Spanish, just took that time telling test yesterday, which was very stressful. If they had missed like the 3 days before that, the teacher is going to give them days to catch up, learn the work, review with her before you don't have to take it necessarily the first day that you're back. Halloween is really, I would say, like for me, a marker. It takes them a long time to get settled in and to find what's working for them. For a lot of our boys, feedback is starting to come back. So if they're math, Spanish, Latin, they've gotten grades, like lots of feedback in. But for team projects, are kind of like feedback's coming in. They're kind of seeing where they fall within the standards that they're going to be graded on for this first semester. So I would say now it's starting to happen. Like I was with a student, I keep using this example. With Mr. Travers yesterday, but Pat was saying to him, okay, so you meet again last time, you had an M, a W, and a P, actually. He's like, okay, so we're in the middle, let's see we're grading another one tonight. Let's see where you are, and I want you to look at where you are. If you're still in the middle, this is when we're touching base, and we're like scheduling a retake, we're working on that skill. So let's look at that skill. So I'd say it's right about now that we're starting to just keep an eye on things like if they're like their math notebook. Their math notebook looked great, and then for the last 3 days, this entire week they haven't written anything in their math notebook. Something's off. They're definitely still learning things in math. They're just not writing it, right? So it's just right about now is a good time. I would say through the end of October.
There might be a couple of actual, rules they're putting down, but a lot of what math notes are is we're doing 4 sample problems. And we've got them all on the board step by step. Take down write it all down. The guys who like to skip 3 or 4 steps when they're doing the sample problems, then when they get to the harder problem on the homework, because there's usually some easy ones, and then they get harder as you go through the homework, and then they're lost because they don't have those steps to look back at. And it's also very helpful when math gets more challenging. and the student can look back and say, all right, I understood step 1 and step 2, but this is where you lost me is on step 3. Rather than just come in and say, I don't understand. Because there are things they do understand, it's when they can, get it more finite of what they actually, where they got lost. That's helpful. So that's one. They do some note-taking work in social studies. They also, in religion, which they don't have till next semester, they do a lot of note-taking, teaching of note-taking skill in religion class, both in 7th grade and in 8th grade. So it happens over the next 2 years. My son's a junior. I remember when we were about 3 weeks into freshman year, I said, after coming through Rupe, I said, so what's the biggest difference you see? He said, well, we take a lot more notes in the high school. I said, did you learn how to take notes in Rupe? He said, oh yeah. I said, who taught you? He said, we learned it in religion class. Great.
I wouldn't expect that much homework every day, and I would say there might have been like a new project that came in, or sometimes there's just like a day where they all come together, right? Like all of your subjects, especially since the day before was the service day. So
Right.
teachers, right, like it was just a day where there was a lot of stuff going down in the classes. Also, it can come with what they're doing after school. So if there's a club or an activity, instead of homework club, like if they went to flag football or Lego robotics or something like that, that day after school, they might have missed that time that they have gotten used to doing their homework. Because most guys find some time throughout the day, whether it's flex or after school, to get a chunk of it done.
So we have a 7-day cycle. Day 1, we always have advisory after lunch. Occasionally it's assembly, but generally speaking advisory. So day 2 through 7 is when, on 2 of those days, they have either music or PE. And for kids in the band, it's 3 of those days, rock band and the Rupe band, 3 of those days they have music. So the other 3 or 4 of those days we have what's called free flex. Some of the guys go to clubs, we have a coding club, and a programming club, and a debate team, and a lot of things like that. Some guys will do a club or something every day during flex. They like it, they take advantage of it, we try to encourage that. But a number of them go to study hall. And, and I run study hall a number of days, and I have 20 students in the study hall, and I walk around to see what they're doing. I would say 18 are pretty focused and efficient in getting work done, and then there's 1 or 2 that take 20 minutes to sort of get set up and get the right music on, etc. And then another 10 minutes to actually look through their homework assignments and keep looking through and flipping the screen back and forth, and then start doing homework with about 30 seconds left in the study hall. But most of them are pretty efficient. And a lot of guys feel they can get, if you figure you're probably going to have math homework every day. And you're probably going to have, and it's 20 minutes, roughly speaking. Maybe it depends on you. Some guys are quicker, some guys are slower. Let's call it 20 minutes. And language homework is probably going to be every day, and that's going to be somewhere around 20 minutes. So a lot of guys can get those 2 subjects done in flex. Or they can get the reading done for something. So that limits it. Now, for a guy who was doing the, going using the study hall a lot, and then all of a sudden decided, hey, that's a really cool club I'm going to go to. And then all of a sudden his day just got busier. So that has something to do with it. A lot of them go study hall. But it's also, as things get behind, as we get closer to progress reports, that's when they're going to be doing their retakes. That's when they're going to need to see a teacher. So it gets a little more, they get a little busier.
Just looking at it with the student, I was like, how does your retakes work? He said, I don't know. I said, your teacher hasn't explained it. He said, I don't think so. I said, okay, well, let's look through Canvas, and they're in like bold print right at the top of the page. It's like, retake policy. I'm like, okay, let's stop and rewind. Read this out loud to me. What's the policy? And it says pretty clearly from all the teen subjects, if a student should be checking it, right? So they've got to check their grades. That's what we're trying to work on them with. Do they have a warning? Are they meeting? Are they progressing? And they should look at it and see, okay, the teachers are telling them a lot of things, like you're getting an assignment next week is also going to test you on this standard. So if they know that, they might say, I'm going to wait on a retake, see how I do on the second one that does it. If they know that something's not coming up and they have a warning, it's up to them to look at it, and it'll say the steps. And usually the steps go along the lines of talk to the teacher and explain what happened. So did you not study correctly? Do you not understand the content? Were you confused by X, Y, or Z? So once you can identify it, talk to the teacher through it, teachers might give you resources. They might say, okay, why don't you do this, review your notes, and then they schedule a time for the retake. It's on the voice with an asterisk. I would say as we get closer to, say, progress reports, teachers aren't going to just let them totally slide by and never hit a warning. right? They're 12 years old, they're still learning a lot of these skills. So it's getting, closer and they're not doing it, they're gonna say, hey, the 7 of you need to be with me after school. You all need to do this retake. So they're gonna tell them, still put it a bit in their hands and say, you need to, find a time, study, but they're gonna there's sort of a little safety net to catch them if they're not scheduling that.
What we'd like them to do is build that awareness
Yeah.
of knowing, okay, here's something I didn't do very well on. Here's how I go about getting better at it. So I meet with the teacher, I check it over, I try to figure out what I didn't do well, I learn the material, and I retake it. Some of those guys do it instantly. They get that. Ooh, they freak out because maybe the first time they didn't get 100 on something, and boom, they are in the teacher's face. How do I redo this? And other guys are, ooh, that was not good. I'm going to crumple it up and
Yeah.
hope it goes away.
Avoid-
It will never come back into my life. It's
Yeah.
gone. And so there are times, and the teachers will sit down and say, okay, everybody open up Canvas. This is what you should see. And if you see this on Canvas, that means you need to retake something. And this is when you can do it. So they do spell it out. I mean, they're doing that daily, but there are times, and as we get closer to a progress report, 2 weeks out, they're going to spend a little more time on that, getting you guys to understand it. And I do want to I wanted to say something about retakes today. You notice that they'll happen in some classes, not in all classes. Philosophically, what we're trying to do is we're trying to build in the students a love of learning. And we're trying to build in them a growth mindset. So, when I was in school, there was sort of a sense of a fixed mindset. I think when we were kids, we took IQ tests like in kindergarten or something like that. And I don't think, our parents saw the scores, but that was it. You took an IQ test in kindergarten and you were, this level of intelligence, and that was set for the rest of your life. The newer, that's called a fixed mindset. So there's nothing I can do. I'm either smart or I'm dumb, and that's it. And the first time I get something that says I'm not a good student, then I'm never going to be a good student again for the rest of my life. We're really trying to build in students a growth mindset, which says if you work at it, your intelligence goes up. You work at something, and some of the guys are going to need multiple shots at something. If you can give them multiple shots, they can get better. So that's the idea of the retake. The other thing about it is you push the standard higher. If I know students are getting 3 drafts to get an essay right, I can put my standard pretty high if I know how to give them good feedback between those drafts to get them there. If I'm only giving them 1 shot, a standard can't be as high. So we put the standard pretty high with an idea they're going to move through the retakes. Now there are other ways to build a growth mindset. So not every class is doing retakes. The team classes all do it. Not every other class does. In math, there's a real emphasis on precision and accuracy. And that is one of those things that's becoming more difficult for our kids because years ago, most subjects were just about precision. Memorize 20 state capitals, memorize this part of the periodic table, memorize, which, all right, you give them a test, you memorize 20 things, you get 18 right, that's 18 out of 20, you have that. Science, social studies, English has, in many places, and not just here, certainly in their elementary school years, there's been more of an emphasis on the bigger concepts and on skills, and less on that sort of memorization. But math, if I say I'm going to give you $500 and I give you negative $500, that's a big difference. Math there's a real emphasis on precision and accuracy. Same with languages. Basic grammar, that's being precise. So some of we're trying, in the last 5 years, as we've noticed, that's become more difficult for students. We've become more explicit about trying to emphasize that in math, this is why it is important that you do every step and you don't forget the negative signs, you bring it down. And because you're emphasizing that precision and accuracy, sometimes retakes, hurt that. So there's different ways to go about it. One thing I would say is, some people say, well, can't kids abuse the system if they can just retake? They just won't do anything the first time. And I would say students can abuse any system. Whatever system we use, it will work for a number and not work as well for some, and then there'll always be some guys who are clever enough to try to figure a way around the system. But they usually find out that, all right, if I'm trying to get to here, if on the first try I get here, I don't have that much further to go. Whereas if I blow off the first try, really that's useless. It didn't help me at all. And so and they'll be teaching them that as well, that the idea is, hey, you got to do the best you can the first time so you can learn from a few mistakes. If you're trying to learn from the fact you got everything wrong, that's almost impossible, and it doesn't do you any good. So there is. And there's still some that take a little longer to kind of come to that understanding, but there's always guys that take longer to come to some understanding. Next month, we're going to have a parent coffee on team grading. And so we've been working with this sort of system of skills and mastery for a number of years. And science has been doing it ever since we started. Social studies and English has been working with it for the last 3, 4, 5 years. We've changed the report card for the team classes this year, where it's not going to be A, B, C, D. That's new this year because we were taking a system which was based on feedback and progress, et cetera, and trying to then, at the very end of the semester, stick it into A, B, C, D grades, which didn't really work. So we've changed it, and on Canvas it looks different. It's just not looking the way we want it to yet. So we're working on, your question's a great one, and that's what we're working to get to. Some of it is Canvas just changed something, so we're trying to figure out how that looks for these things. I'm actually meeting with each of the teams over the next week to look at it from the parent point of view and say, hey, this is what a parent sees. What is this telling them? And is this telling them what you want it to be telling them? And if not, how do we get there? So what's happening in class is no real difference from before. We're just how we communicate to the parents. We're not where we need to be yet. If you look at Spanish or math, it's pretty clear. You can see those grades. For the team classes, we're not there yet. And it's one of those things that you couldn't get there over the summer. You have to be doing. You have to be into it. So we're working through it. Ask your sons though. There's a lot going on in class, talking to them about their grades and what that means on campus, and the teachers will learn what it says. If they say, I have no idea what this means, if that's true, then encourage them to ask their teachers, hey, go in and get an explanation. Sometimes it's not true. Sometimes they know exactly what it means, but they're really better off pretending they don't know what it means. But we are, and I'm hoping that certainly it's going to get better. We keep checking it, and we will probably, if we do parent coffee in November, it'll also be great to have more questions from parents, because that'll help us to refine it as well.
Or I guess 2 things about Canvas that are your friend when you're looking at the grade book for team classes are on the regular sort of grade page where if it was math, you'd see like grades. There's a little, it's hard to say, but there's like a little text bubble next to some assignments. If you click on that, that's where the teacher's comments are. There's like 5 other ways to get to those comments, but that's one place where you can see and he can see. Your son should all know that. And then the second thing is the tab that says Learning Mastery is like when you open a team grade book, like an English grade book, it says, I don't even know what the left one says, but the second tab says Learning Mastery. That's going to be your friend. That's where the standards are laid out. So instead of looking at the assignment view, it's based on standards. So if you haven't seen that, I would say over the weekend, like have your son show you and say, hey, open this up, explain this to me. He should know what those standards are and kind of like what's happening there. But as we're working through it, that's a handy tab to know about.
At the very, very beginning of the year, we had them fill out a 7-day schedule grid. So they should have them, a lot of them took a photo of it, so it's right there on their iPad.
Yeah.
So they can look at that grid and say, okay, Friday is day 6, and day 6 I have, math at the end of the day, language right before the end of the day, whatever it is. So that's one way. The other is on the portal, the BCI portal, and even if you go in as a parent and click on your son, and then you'll see a schedule tab. You click on schedule, and you can jump through for the next 3 or 4 days ahead, and it's pretty clear. And then beyond that, you have to go to like the month view, which is a little harder to read, but he can see that every day.
If your son is confused and his lock screen is not his schedule, it should be. So it doesn't have to be his iPad background, usually it varies. They want like a picture of the Celtics, they can do that. But their lock screen can be that picture, like a bunch of them do that. So then if they can't remember, like especially say with service day, wasn't a day of the cycle, so then they're like, ugh, what's today? It's a day 6. They could just literally tap their iPad and see. The other thing that throws them off, this might be happening for him, is team class. So they at first get their schedule and they think like, oh, I go, the first half of my day is Spanish, math, drama, but then I go English, science, social studies, and within 2 days they realize that hour and a half period, hour 20, or a 2-hour period could look like anything. And so that sort of throws them off. Like if you say, well, what do you have in the afternoon? Like, I don't know. Because it could be all day science. It could be social studies and science combined. And sometimes that's what they don't know what room they'll be in. Because it's not the same format they used to have where they walk into an English class, then they walk into a science class, and then they walk into a social studies class. So that sometimes throws them off. It takes them a little bit longer to get used to they almost just need to say, I have team in the afternoon. Like that's what they'll start saying, I have team in the morning, because they don't quite know what those periods are gonna look like. So that sometimes is something that throws them off. The boys have different systems. There's not a required system for folders or binders or anything, which is new for some of them. Like some of them are used to, you have to have, I don't know, like a 3-ring binder that you carry around that has everything in it. For a lot of them, what works is to have a folder, especially boys who struggle with just organization of things, I'll tell them to have a folder that goes with them to every class. That's what we're working on right now, what I need to take home. So even if it's English stuff that you don't have for homework, it's what do you need to have out in class, or is the topic that you're still working on, right? But if I'm trying to think of things that are old now, and we're still working on things, but if we finish The Outsiders and we move down to Our Town, and it's mid-November and we're reading Our Town, and I apologize if this timeline is off and they don't read Our Town for 8 months, but they're reading Our Town, and The Outsiders is over, it's over. It's a good skill for them to take all of that and really decide, are there things in there that you still need? So are there things about grammar? Are there things about writing an essay that we need? Then let's put them in an English folder that just stays in your locker or stays at home where you do your homework. If you do your homework at the kitchen table, at your desk. Is there stuff that you just don't, that it was right then, it was stuff about The Outsiders, it was handouts, but you don't need it anymore, or it's this little sheet that was about going around that day and finding stuff, for an exercise. And we can honestly put it in recycle. So I'll sit with boys and say, let's make 3 files. Still need it right now, need it for later, don't need it anymore. Because they do get bogged down, I think, in that, just in all the details, and they are nervous, they don't want to fall behind. So they're I'll just keep it, but then it's just piling up. The other thing I'd say is super important is for them to date things. They're so bad at writing the date on things. They're all used to phones and Apple Watches and things that tell them the date and time. So if they're not dating things like math handouts and English handouts, it's really hard for you as the parent, for me as the counselor to sit down, for their advisor to sit down and say, well, when did you do this in Latin? And they're like, a couple weeks ago. Well, is a couple weeks ago the first day of school, or is it actually last week? So encouraging them to date it, because then we can help sort of sort through that stuff that they have piling up.
Pretty common that teachers do that sometimes. I'll give a little more information and just sort of say, hey, when does this happen? I'm sure it happens somewhat different from teachers. Some teachers say, we just finished a book in English, put all that aside, you don't need to bring it anymore. Or we just finished math, units, to take those handouts and store them for when we have the mid-year final or whatever it's going to be.
The English teachers are phenomenal. They give me book suggestions all the time, and they really are attuned to middle school boys' reading habits. So if he can identify even if he says I don't like to read, but I like, I don't know, this TV show or sports or X, Y, or Z, they really have just a wealth of knowledge. Here's a graphic novel about Larry Bird, here you go, you can get behind this. And instead of it's history, here's this awesome thing, it's a fantasy about the Roman Empire that was still, happening in New York City or something. So they're very good at that, at helping them find independent reading that will remind them that they like reading.
Most of the English class in the 7th grade, they finished The Outsiders, they're going into an independent reading right now. So, I was up in Ms. Guiney's room yesterday afternoon, and every student, she gave them time at the end of class because they had asked for time to read. They wanted to read. So that's one of the nice things, is you get encouragement from guys around you, because there are a lot of readers here. So, but she's, we put bookshelves in all the English classrooms, and we buy books all the time, so there's hundreds of books in the English classroom. So she was, one boy was really struggling to, what am I going to read? And she was recommending various books. So that and then there'll be, because they're all doing the independent reads, it's probably about 10 different books in a class of 20. She said most of the books, she did with at least one or two, at least two students reading them. They'll do some stuff with it that'll encourage you guys will hear, oh, that guy really liked that book, and I like that book too. So they do a lot throughout the year to encourage that reading. And then there's for guys who love to read at book club during Flex. But thank you all for coming in today. And again, we'll send out something for our next parent coffee, maybe sometime in November.